Who's actually going to get the most out of swapping out the switch on a Berkel slicer? And who would be better off looking elsewhere? If you're wondering whether this part is worth the price for an everyday kitchen or a busy deli, you're not alone. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The hesitation most buyers feel comes from two places: the fear of buying a component that won't fit, and the worry that a single switch replacement won't solve a deeper reliability issue. When I first started digging into the Berkel switch market, I noticed a pattern in the forums. People who run commercial slicers treat any downtime as a loss of revenue, while hobbyists see the slicer as a weekend project. That's why the decision to replace just the switch rather than the whole unit can feel like a gamble. You're putting money into a single piece, hoping it will restore smooth operation, but you could also be buying a part that's cheap on paper but ends up needing professional installation you didn't budget for. The real question is, does this OEM-style switch give you the peace of mind you need, or does it add another layer of complexity? Let's start with who should actually consider this part. First, anyone who already owns a Berkel slicer and has identified the switch as the culprit behind intermittent cutting or a completely dead motor is a prime candidate. The part number 497500404 lines up with the original factory switch, meaning you're not dealing with a generic clone that might have a different contact layout. If you run a deli, a sandwich shop, or a small meat processing line where the slicer is on for several hours a day, you'll appreciate that this switch is engineered for the sort of continuous duty cycles that commercial equipment demands. In those environments, a reliable switch can be the difference between serving a line of customers and watching a queue shrink. A second group that benefits are the technically inclined home chefs who have invested in a used Berkel slicer for their butcher block. These users often enjoy the precision of a commercial blade, but lack the budget for a brand new machine. For them, a direct fit switch is a cost-effective way to keep the slicer humming without having to shell out for a whole replacement. The fact that the part is an exact match for the original means you won't have to fiddle with adapters or rewiring, just a simple pull out of the old switch and snap in of the new one. Now, who should skip this purchase? If you don't already own a Berkel slicer, buying this switch is essentially buying a piece of a puzzle you don't have. The part is specific to the Berkel's internal wiring and mounting points. Trying to repurpose it in a different brand slicer will likely lead to compatibility headaches. Also, if your slicer is older than 10 years and has a history of multiple failures, motor, blade, safety interlock, spending money on a single switch might be a band-aid rather than a solution. In those cases, a full service or even a replacement slicer could be a smarter financial move. Finally, if you're not comfortable opening up the slicer's housing or you lack a basic understanding of electrical components, the installation could turn into a costly call to a technician, which erodes any savings from buying the part yourself. So, what does the switch actually bring to the table in real-world use? The biggest practical strength is its guaranteed fit. Because it's the exact part the manufacturer used, the mounting brackets line up perfectly, and the electrical contacts match the original specifications. In a typical deli scenario, a broken switch will cause the slicer to cut out mid-slice, leaving a half-finished product on the conveyor and forcing the staff to manually finish the job, a messy, time-consuming situation. Swapping in this OEM switch restores the on-off function instantly, meaning the line can get back to full speed within minutes. Users who have posted about similar replacements often note that the switch feels solid, with a click that confirms a secure engagement, no vague wiggle that you sometimes get with third-party parts. Another strength is durability under heavy use. While we don't have a lab report to quote, the fact that this part is designed for commercial machines tells you it's meant to handle frequent toggling. A deli that slices a few hundred pounds of meat per day will push a switch through many cycles, and an OEM component is built to survive that rhythm. In practice, this translates to fewer future service calls and less chance of the switch welding shut or corroding in a humid kitchen. On the flip side, the most notable weakness is the price point. Because it's an original equipment manufacturer part, it sits higher than generic knockoffs you might find on a marketplace. If you're a hobbyist on a tight budget, that cost can feel steep, especially when you factor in the possibility of needing a professional to install it. The other practical downside is that the switch is a sealed unit, which means you can't easily service it.